What's up, guys? Cameron Fous here with FOUS4Trading.com. Today, I want to go over the trade on RPRX. Both me and Big Mike, my top student, both tag team this thing, taking it down short for some nice profits here. You can see this is what I posted yesterday. I made $1,900 on RPRX, and then we had Big Mike uh, made 2,300. So great to see my students making more than me on a lot of these trades. I've been doing this for 13 years. Um, Making money is cool, but what gives me satisfaction and excites me is when I see my students actually making money trading, because that means I'm doing something right when I teach people these strategies. Speaking of which, guys, we got FOUS4 Part 3 getting ready to drop. We're actually doing a soft launch coming up here over the weekend for our current FOUS4 students. So really excited to get FOUS4 Part 3, the dark side of trading. This is going to be everything detailed, this exact strategy, how to make money going short. The last couple years, the majority of my trading profits have all been going short. So I'm really excited to get that out. But let's go over the trade analysis of RPRX. So first of all, looking at the daily chart here, this has made a very significant run to the upside. We've been seeing a lot of parabolic moves in the small cap market. Small caps have been pretty stagnant for quite some time, but with the Dow up on all-time highs and a lot of stuff going on, all of a sudden we've been seeing a lot of low float small cap rippers to the upside, which is great for the original FOUS4 training going long. There's been a lot of revival pattern breakouts to make money on the long side. But what's so great about it, people might think, oh, we're in a bull market. Why would you want to learn how to short? Because my favorite shorts to play are stocks that have made a significant move to the upside. Okay, when you look at RPRX here, previous to this breakout, you have zero guess or 0% probability this thing's going to make a 100% run. But when you see a stock like RPRX make a move from 30 cents upwards of 90 cents, that's a 200% move. There is a 100% probability after a parabolic move that we're going to see a huge pullback at some point, and that's great odds. To have a 100% probability to see a crash at some point, that's great odds to make a trade. That's why shorting is so great, because the probability is there. Trying to guess that this thing is going to go up 200%, that's impossible. So I love shorting because the probability of it happening is so high. The mastery part comes in just being able to time it, and that's what I teach you in FOUS4 Part 3, is my different strategies that I use to time it. So I'm just going to go over some of the ways that I identified the top on RPRX here for this particular trade. So we had several signals here that was a potential top. We did have the gap fill at about 80 cents on RPRX. The 200-day moving average on the daily chart, this is the exponential 200-day, was at 75 cents. So those are two pretty big indicators. But I was also cautious because we also had the dollar mark here. $1 is a very significant area of support and resistance on stocks. So I was definitely worrisome of, hey, maybe this thing's actually going to break out here if we look at the intraday chart. Maybe this is going to spike all the way up to 1. We call that a magnet here at FOUS4 Trading. When a stock is just below a hold number and it's got momentum going forward, a lot of times it's just drawn to that resistance level. So we call it a magnet. It's basically just a magnet to that next level. But due to the fact this thing had already gone up from 30 to 90 in just 2 days, that's over 200%. There was definitely a high probability of potentially these two significant resistance areas being at the gap fill as well as at the 200-day moving average, that we might just be seeing a pullback off there. So that's on the daily chart scale of why I was potentially looking at a top here. For the intraday scale here, I usually look at the 1-minute intraday chart. And on RPRX, we had that first morning initial squeeze. This is most likely a lot of people who were short. They're like, oh shit, I'm short. We got a gap open here. I can't let it go any higher. Then all of a sudden we start seeing it tick, 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 tick up. People who were short overnight are getting scared. They're getting stopped out. But what I look for on these plays, especially stocks that are parabolic on the daily, I look for the gapper on the 1-minute intraday chart, and then I'm looking for a nice failed spike to the upside and then a crack of the VWAP, which you can see here by the orange line here, the volume weighted average price, which is basically just showing you where a lot of volume is traded at what price. So Currently, the VWAP was at about 83 cents here on RPRX. I started loading up at about between 80 cents and 82 cents here, so my average was about 81 or so on this for about 20K shares. From there, I was looking for this to at least fill the gap, and my longer term goal was to see it go into the 60s. I covered pretty quickly. When I see a big washout and I see a big spike to the downside very quickly at the open, I like to lock in some gains. I like to take profits because if you've looked at what's been going on in the small cap market over the last month or so, anytime you've seen a big washout, it's also been met by a huge bounce. So if you don't take that morning profit quickly, at least take partial because you don't know if it's going to go farther. But if you don't take some of that big washout at the beginning with at least partial gains, so many times we've seen it continue to rip to the upside and then you give back everything. So it's important that you're locking in gains on the way down, and that's exactly what I did. I took partial my gains here at about 74, 75, I believe it was, to lock in a half position. I then held the second position there for 10,000, and I actually added at 75 cents for this next washout, which is basically this yellow line here is the retest and gap fill of the previous day's close, which was about 75, and we kind of built this descending triangle. Once it looked like we were getting ready to potentially break this down, I saw some sellers come in on level 2. I hopped on the bandwagon to go into the momentum side of this trade short, added back another 10,000 shares, and I covered down near 70 cents to lock in my full gain of $1,900 on RPRX. Big Mike continued to hold this. If you can see, I don't know if you can see the actual his entries and exits on this. You can see Mike was getting short here, added here, covered on that washout, and then he covered the last bit of it in that here over at 67 for a total of $2,300 on this trade. So it really just depends on how much patience you have. I typically like to only trade maximum of 90 minutes per day. I don't like to sit in front of the computer all day, okay? Time for me is my most valuable asset. I think it's everybody's most valuable asset. So I literally only like to trade 90 minutes per day, and then I got a shitload of other stuff to do. I got to make YouTube videos, I got to create content, I got to Instagram, I got to Facebook, I got to write emails, I got to respond to people's comments. So much other stuff that I do other than trading when you run a business. So I like to stick my trading time to a maximum of 90 minutes, and that's where you see the most volatility. A lot of people think trading and day trading is like, oh, you sit at a computer all day and look at stocks. For me, I try to get out of there as fast as possible because the longer I sit at my computer, the more mistakes I'm going to make in the trading game. So I like to take advantage of morning volatility, walk in, walk out, lock in my $1,900 like I did today in the first 20 minutes and be done. I'm saying maximum 90 minutes. Usually I'm done trading within the first 30. The next 60 is usually me trying to get out of the position that I entered within the first 5 minutes of the open. So it really just depends on what the situation is there. But this was a perfect example of one of the strategies I teach you in FOUS4 Part 3, guys, the dark side of trading. Everything I've learned about shorting stocks over the last several years, as I've predominantly been a long trader for the last decade, up until the last couple of years, and now the last several years, the majority of my profits have been going short. So I'm really excited to get FOUS4 Part 3 out to you guys. It is a phenomenal game-changing training. Check it out, FOUS4Trading.com.